If you don't do well in your exams, you will not do well in your life. It's another thing that you and I don't have any evidence of that in the guys that we graduated with. By 2005, we removed everything that stood for traditional education. So we removed books, we removed all testing and examinations, we removed uniforms, we removed pretty much any kind of regimentation. All of the symbols of traditional education. We are working with a generation of kids who at a very early age have gone through a pandemic where the entire world stopped.
Once in a century experience.
Think about that. These school kids have gone through that. These kids, many of them may not have even articulated it. The young ones have gone through the fear that they themselves may not be alive or they might lose a parent. And they've seen people lose
and some of them would have.
And some of them have.
So thank you, Manit, for coming on this podcast.
Thank you for having me here, Aakash.
No, we are very excited.
Pleasure.
Very, very excited, and especially given the illustrious journey that you've had and continue to build on that. We are really looking forward to an exciting conversation. But before we get into that, I think it'll be very important for us to understand, where did this all come from? Like who's the motivator, initiator of you getting into education, right? There are so many other options.
Right, of course. So this is, in 1998, 26 years ago, when my father decided to take a leap into mainstream education. And one fine day, he came home and he said he's going to set up a school very close to our house.
Just like that, one fine day?
Just like that. He had, of course, been training teachers across the country on yoga and meditation and value education. So he wanted to create a model of his own.
Right.
So this happened, and of course, as the family with 3 brothers, we all started rallying behind him, providing the support that was needed to set it up. And he set a timeline of 5 months.
5 months?
Constructing the building. So it was 20th of December 1998. And he said on his birthday, 20th of April 1999, he was going to start the school. Lo and behold, he spent day and night and he made it happen. That's the kind of guy he was. I wish some of that rubbed off on me also.
I'm sure.
But he would decide and just do stuff. There was never a gap. And so the schools happened. I think the early days, I used to go in as the management. We had some part to play with the recruitment of the initial team. But the assumption always was that you hire a principal, you hire a team, and everything else will happen. It's not like stuff did not happen. The school in its conventional sense started doing extremely well.
And where was it?
This was in Vasant Kunj.
It was in Vasant Kunj. Oh, the Vasant Kunj was the first.
Yeah, our first campus. And yet, there's something within me that told me that this seems more or less like what we used to go through. We've built good infrastructure, the toilets look clean, the schools look far more inviting, but has the classroom really changed? Has the content, the curriculum, has the pedagogy really changed? And I wasn't even qualified to understand at that point of time. Not.
How old were you?
I was, I think about 26, 27 at that time. Yeah, pretty young. And I'd given up on education as a child. In fact, I remember when I was in my grade 7 or 8 or 9, some of my earliest memories from the classroom, I know I was always bored. I was always wondering, why are we learning what we're learning? How is it relevant to my life? And I guess students have been asking those questions forever. Yeah, as the Industrial Revolution education model was created, I think there's some lack of relevance built in, or that relevance was for a very different kind of jobs market, for a repetitive kind of job market. And, so one was just going through the motions. And I don't know if it was different for you, but
No, it was absolutely same. Like you are saying that you have written off the education. A lot of us, growing in the 90s and the 80s, because the cookie cutter formula was very, very standard. You go to the school, there is a syllabus to cover, you finish the syllabus, you have your attendance, you give your assessment, you get your grade, and off you go.
yeah, exactly. And if you remember, at that time we used to think that, okay, now I'm writing this exam, I will never have to remember this content for the rest of my life.
Right.
That was the hope, that nobody ever brings me back to this content. So what fun is that kind of learning then? And that was a pain point I always had. And I remember I would have these discussions even with the first school, with some of the educators, our principal and everybody, and everyone was like,
Like, why are you asking this question? This is how it is.
this is the system, this is what the parents want, this is the teachers, this is what the teachers know how to deliver.
Yeah.
And I was like, what about the kid? And there was no answer to that question, really.
Right.
Is the child really engaged in this process or not? Was not an important question.
So why, we'll continue with that, but, just because you mentioned this, why the interest of the child never took precedence, never took priority in the education system in India? Like, what has been your, you've met all, pretty much all top leaders in education, school owners, people in higher education. So where is it that fundamentally we've gone wrong?
See, fundamentally, if you see, this is not just an Indian problem.
Okay.
This is a global issue. India may have started focusing on primary education and education in general at the school level a little later in their journey, right? So the focus came on school education only in the 70s. Before that, we were much more focused on higher ed. So building these big institutions.
So that was a phase.
Glory.
Yeah.
But it wasn't until 20 years after independence that we actually realized that we need to strengthen our primary education, which is where you're actually going to build character. So systemically, for a country as large as ours, governments have to create a system that works consistently. And often the content is driven by the ability or inability of the teachers to mark it, to grade it, to assess it, and we did not have that kind of skill level in teaching and learning. So if you remember, in 80s, I wrote my CBSE board exams in 1990. I remember for every subject, there used to be 5 questions.
Right.
So I did commerce, so for commerce, economics, accountancy, everything had these 20-mark questions generally. These were subjective type questions. And you did not know where your paper was going to go. You did not know who was going to get graded how. So the examination results weren't really reflecting a child's ability. Over the years, they started moving to more objective type questions, yes, no, multiple choice, all kinds of things.
Right.
And we've seen now grades and marks going up to 99%, 100%, college cutoffs, everything. So they actually had to dumb down the question papers because they were struggling with the problem of reliability and consistency in their assessments.
Of the assessment checking.
Yeah. How do you prepare people to do it?
Yeah, you can make a standard question paper, but the checking cannot be standardized.
So
if it is subjective.
Yeah. But if at that time there was a good teacher, a good marker, then those questions were a reasonable test of a child's ability, because at least you were supposed to put together some kind of an argument, you were supposed to write 4 pages, do something. Over the years, it's become like a marking scheme where if you've written these 4 words, keywords or something similar to them, you get 4 marks. If you've written 3, you get 3 marks. And of course, at such a scale, how do you even solve for that problem? I'm hoping technology would have some answers. But at this point of time, it's very, very difficult to solve for this. And which is why the entire system keeps getting pushed into mediocrity, into standardization, into examinations, and then the entire learning process is directed towards doing well in those examinations.
So, so this is a systemic problem given the size of the country, and you say that it is not only India but globally it is the same problem or similar problem. But what are the parents doing? They are a very critical stakeholder of this triage, if I may call it. Your parents, your student, and your mentor, which is your school, teacher, everyone. So, these two are doing a conversation, these two are doing a transaction, but these guys are bystanders. But they have a lot at hand and a lot at stake because their own child is involved and they're paying a fee for a service. So why do you think, is there a problem at the Indian parent? Are they expecting less?
Oh, they're expecting very less.
They just want to get over the hump?
Yeah, they're expecting very, very less. And that's a great question. And we've done a lot of work in our institutions on encouraging parents to ask for more than examination results. But we've had several situations in our school where parents would come back, and even after the kind of philosophy that we have, even after in our admission process, we clearly say, hey, if you're coming here for examination results, please don't. That is not the sole goal of this institution. Parents, when they come in nursery, KG, they're talking about all of the right things. Most of them.
Yeah.
In general, that we want our kids to be happy, we want them to be confident, we want them to be curious, we want them to be learners for life, everything. They have the right vocabulary. But as the kids grow up, we see them getting anxious, and I'm not saying it's the parents' fault. Ultimately, they need to get them into good institutions of higher education. Until we break this whole facade, this whole drama, this whole charade of stamps and endorsements, okay,
degrees and institutions and the Ivy Leagues.
And again, you people like you and I are hopeful that in another few years we'll be able to break that entire system and focus on real learning. These degrees and these brands of institutions, just like brands of clothes, will give validation to parents. And for a parent, one can't blame them. The entire society is going to judge you.
Yeah.
Hey, my kid went to Stanford, or the neighbor's kid went to Stanford. Hey, I'm not a good parent if I couldn't get my kid there. Or
they question their own parenting. We are similar social circle, similar school. If my kid doesn't go, then there's something lacking in me. I didn't do the right job.
Yeah. So it's not just a measure of your child's competence. It becomes, parents take a lot of pressure on themselves, and which is sad. But in an environment where there are such few institutions of higher education which one would want to send their kids to, what do you do?
Yeah. And coming back to your story and connecting this last comment that you mentioned, so when you're building up an institution like this, you're seeing all these commentary with the parents, you know what they're asking and expecting is right, but the system and the limitation that I have on this side of the table are, getting heavy on my head. So how do I find a middle path? And I think that's where the idea for, Heritage Experiential came about, and, would love to hear.
So I'll go back, I'll sort of rewind to that story that I was telling you. So after the Vasant Kunj school happened, and after I kind of gave up on trying to reform anything, and not surprisingly, the school started doing well. The kids were speaking English, the teachers were not nasty to the kids, and they were doing whatever happens in a good school, and then there was good infrastructure, facilities, everything. And so it was very well accepted by the parent community.
Right.
And we were encouraged to set up 2 more schools in 2003, Gurgaon and the Rohini campus.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in the Gurgaon campus, when it started, I again started having the same questions, and again started discussing with teachers and everybody. And again, everybody thought this guy's crazy. We don't know what's wrong with him. And then I spent a day inside the classroom. I decided that I'll go not to teach. I decided that as an observer, I'll just go sit for an entire day inside the class.
Just out of the blue, you just decided?
I just decided, let me see what's happening inside the classroom.
And that was Vasant Kunj?
No, in Gurgaon.
In Gurgaon.
So when everybody's saying that everything is okay, why don't I go just check it out for myself? Yeah. So I spent that entire day and I experienced so much fear.
Fear?
Fear. And here I was wondering, I'm part of the management of the school. I'm sitting inside a classroom. Why am I feeling scared? But it was such a visceral feeling that I remembered and I realized that I was carrying so much trauma from my childhood classroom experience. There was just so much fear in it. Have you done your homework or not? If the teacher asks you a question, if you don't respond well enough, will your classmates, will your peers humiliate you alongside the teacher? There was just so much judgment, such a huge focus on deficits as opposed to capacities. Everybody was, if you see the entire society, and parenting was also such at that time. So everybody was focused on, tujhe ye nahi aata, you don't do this well, or you don't do that well, or you need to improve on this. But there's very little focus on strengths, or potential. And which is what a child needs. You need to put your belief behind a child. And all of this put together with examinations as early as grade 1, comparisons, the entire ranking system, it sort of ensured that a child never has the ability to be themselves. So the entire system was driven to destroy your self-esteem versus building it.
Right.
And when I arrived at that realization after that day and some thinking, I said, oh my God, what are we doing? What good is this math, science, or English going to do if children don't learn to be comfortable in their own skin? If children can't express themselves, and we've robbed them of a very essential freedom. And their identity. So what are they going to do? And then the second realization, having reflected on children not really knowing why they are learning what they are learning, beyond a point you stop asking that question, right? It's fait accompli. You do what you're being told. And what are you being told? You're being told that examination results are the be-all and end-all of education. If you don't do well in your exams, you will not do well in your life. It's another thing that you and I don't have any evidence of that in the guys that we graduated with.
True.
But that's the story that we were sold. So the currency of success was examination results. And the path to it was assumed had to be arduous, had to be monotonous, had to be boring, and you just had to go through it. So rather than perceiving learning as a gift, we all perceived learning as a duty. ये तो करना ही पड़ेगा.
There's no escape.
There's no escape.
Right.
Now,
that's a very, 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 beautifully you put it. Instead of thinking it as a gift, the moment you start thinking as a duty, you've taken the soul and the essence out of the whole thing.
So what happens when you perform that duty for 14 years?
Fatigue.
And it becomes a part of your DNA, right? So you stop asking why. You get used to the idea that at every point there is a currency of success that I pursue, and it doesn't matter if it's meaningful or purposeful to me. It doesn't matter if I understand why I'm doing this or not. I just am going to do it because I'm expected to do it.
Right.
So whether it is getting into now that brand of college, or a little later getting into that MBA college, or getting a job in that company, or starting my enterprise in a certain way, or
and then the cycle suddenly starts again where your child is going.
or getting this kind of a spouse for myself.
Yeah, even that.
Or getting, so it's not getting defined by what I want, it is getting defined by whatever the currency of success is, whatever will give me.
Defined by the peers or the society, and I have to bow down to that.
Bigger house, bigger car, bigger, hoping that somewhere if I go through all of this, knowing very well that at any step, I did not really get the kind of gratification that I thought it is going to give me. Right? But you keep pursuing that. And then that duty becomes so a part of life that, now I find, and with so many conversations with parents and people on these issues, I found even taking your kids out becomes a duty. Even spending time with them becomes a duty. Because so many parents would come to us and we'd tell them, hey, you're not spending quality time with your kids. And we'd figure that hey, this is also coming with a sense of duty. And I say that with all love and empathy for them. It's just, it's the curse of bad education.
Yeah.
When you don't have relevance in education, when children don't understand the purpose of what they're doing on a day-to-day basis for a long period of time, then they get attuned to treating everything as a job. So, we'd have sessions with parents, 500 parents in a room, and I'd ask them, so how many of you think you found your calling or you're finding meaning and purpose in your work? And we'd probably have 10, 15 hands go up. And I wasn't surprised at all.
Absolutely.
So this system of education robs you of your sense of purpose, robs you of your sense of identity and the ability to be yourself. And in that light, we decided we really had to do something about it. And it was one hell of a ride, I can tell you.
So many minds you'll have to change.
Yeah.
Really go head on with them, who've been doing this for years and years and years and been very successful.
Been very successful, yeah.
In doing that.
So the parents are coming to us are saying, hey, I went through this same system. I'm doing well. Yeah. I can educate my kid at Heritage. What is wrong with me?
Yeah.
And
that's what I want for my child, and what's wrong in it?
I want for my child. So we had to actually explain to them that you're doing well despite your education, not because of your education. And it took them a long time to understand it. I think 2004, when we started having a lot of these reflections, we started going on off-sites, spending time in camps, visiting other schools, all kinds of things, because the one big problem was that I had understood what we did not want.
Okay. What's a complete no?
Yeah. But I had no idea about what else to do.
Then the world was open for you to experiment.
Right. And the teachers were still in the same place. I remember this is possibly September 2004. There were about 40 teachers in the Gurgaon school. And we used to sit every afternoon after school and just have random dialogues about education. And one of them then folded her hands and said, "Aap chale jao." I don't get what you're saying, and we're not going to change anything. Why don't you just leave and leave it to the principal, leave it to us, and we'll handle it. And
how did it feel?
It felt awful. It felt awful. But Aakash, to be fair, I can articulate these things right now. Yeah. At that point, I was still forming my thoughts around it.
And even you were not sure whether this will work or not.
Yeah. Then, one step at a time, things started changing.
What was the first pivotal change that you brought in?
So I think October 2004, we went out, I remember it was Corbett Park.
Okay. As a team?
As a team.
Not the kids and the parents, as a team?
As a team. Teachers, us, about 40 odd people. And we really did a lot of work on self. We challenged ourselves, did crazy physical activities, spent a lot of time looking at what is wrong with the education system, and we did a very serious shared visioning and shared values exercise.
So that brought everybody on board.
And people just lit up for the first time. They seem like...
Anything you can recall, like what was that aha moment that, wow, now this one gets it?
So it's a very funny moment. So the first person who got up and said, you know, now I get it. Now you want us to think and you want us to work. And she wasn't joking at all.
Yeah.
She wasn't joking at all. It was like an aha moment for her. She said, now I get it. Until now, I thought teaching was about coming in with my book, reading out whatever's written in the book, giving the kids some questions, getting out. It was just a kind of a delivery. It wasn't a process of learning. And everybody laughed, but of course, people understood the spirit of what she was saying. And she's a rock star at the school still after 20 years, doing fantastic work. And then, as it happens in organizational change, a couple of people started staying late in school, and then everybody is nudging those teachers, hey, what are you doing, ruining the culture of the place? Don't stay so late, you're making me look bad. All of that started. And then one teacher at a time, as people started tasting some purpose, they started transforming. I think we understood that teachers are not, we can't use teachers as instruments to achieve our own goals. So if I had a goal in mind, they're not instruments to achieve those goals. They're people first. And they have their lives, they have their journeys. They need to experience that sense of purpose themselves before they can give it to their kids. They need to have that sense of belief in themselves before they can again transfer that belief to the children that they teach. And we found that even teachers coming from very good homes, very educated homes, good socioeconomic backgrounds, privileged, were very disempowered. In the patriarchal society that we have, people had not taken very many decisions. So often, even in such family backgrounds, they had not decided what they were going to study, what college they were going to go to. Many of them had not decided who they were going to marry, or how many kids they were going to have, or what work they were going to do. So we used to run an exercise asking them about their dreams. And often they would say, koi kalesh na ho. Let's pray there is basic peace, and my children are happy, and my husband is happy, and my family is, even if it is artificial harmony, is existing.
So this is essentially an sustenance call. Let it sustain. I don't want like the whole world on my feet, but I just want things to sustain. Nothing should go wrong.
At the lowest of the Maslow's hierarchy.
And those are the people who are educating the future for tomorrow.
But that's the state of most people in the country, that I am content with this, and I'd ask them, hey, what is your dream for yourself? Says, I'm not capable of thinking about myself. And I was like, it's fantastic you're thinking about your families, but you need to have a dream for yourself. And it's when they started seeing that the process that we were running was not of skilling them on teaching, but to make them better human beings themselves. And by better, I don't mean productive. By better, I mean more self-aware, more purposeful.
More purposeful.
And more belief in themselves. Really help them. And it's not like I'm saying we helped them. We were also helping ourselves. As their lives were getting transformed, our lives were getting transformed, the leaders of the school. And it was a fantastic journey. But one great lesson was that when, we're all intrinsically lazy. We want least effort and maximum output. But, if people can experience a deep sense of purpose, that really trumps that laziness. So we we saw ordinary people doing absolutely extraordinary work. By 2005, we removed everything that stood for traditional education. So we removed books, we removed all testing and examinations, we removed uniforms, we removed pretty much any kind of regimentation, all of the symbols of traditional education. And we replaced it with a hands-on curriculum. So the first thing was to find a context for a child to understand why I'm learning what I'm learning. So creating themes and projects, long-term, many of them were like 6 months projects. One very popular project was Rahagiri, as you would have seen it. So that was created by 7th grade kids in our school. For 3 years they were fighting to get a bike path in Gurgaon, and finally they settled for Rahagiri this Sundays, and then an NGO took over that work and scaled it to almost 50 cities in the country. So it was a movement started by grade 7 kids. So that was the project. But through the project, they learnt about bicycles, they learnt about gears and ratios, they did their science, they did their math, but everything was contextual. It wasn't just a random theory. And they made teams, they held each other accountable, they embraced the better ideas of others. They learnt how to solve problems, real problems, not...
And to their comfort, I mean, who they are, and be very free and not worry about being judged by their peers or their teachers for responding in a certain way. So I think that freedom is a great start.
Yeah. There was no fear. Yeah, in fact, I didn't mention that, but that was the first thing. We said no fear inside the classrooms at all, no threat, no sarcasm. No humiliation of any kind. Children should feel safe. Psychological safety is the first place to begin.
And somewhere, there is a thought process to exactly this idea that if you're not putting kids through rigor and toughness and, questioning them and, are we creating kids who are not probably ready or softer for the onslaught that the VUCA world that's going to throw upon us?
So that's a great question. One thing is the whole concept of rigor, as we experienced in 2005, 2006. Parents' understanding of rigor was copy mein kitne page bhare. So unless you did a lot of meaningless, repetitive work and the kid seemed unhappy, it was almost assumed that the child is not doing any work. In fact, I remember this very funny incident. This parent, and I won't use the name, my room 4 or 5 months after the change work started. And he said, Mr. Jain, I'm extremely unhappy. I sat him down. I said, everything okay? I mean, I thought the child was hurt or something, or whatever. And I said, okay, so tell me what's happening. He said, my child's become a gunda. He used the word gunda. He's the leader of the pack in his colony. He's totally annoying. He asks 100 questions a day. Probably a 3rd or 4th grader.
Third or fourth grader?
3rd or 4th grader. He asks 100 questions a day. He is always looking happy. He is always having fun. And I am very concerned that he must be academically failing, and you don't have any tests for me to figure out if that is the case or not.
Wow.
So I need clarity. And it was like music to my ears. I said, जो आप कह रहे हो ना, हमें यही चाहिए था.
हम यही कर रहे हैं.
Exactly यही कर रहे हैं. And I can understand your pain around it, but please give us some time. Having said that, about a 3rd of our parents left.
Left?
They left.
They didn't buy into.
They didn't buy into it, and I don't blame them.
Yeah.
So one thing is to have the intention to do something. The other thing is also to be able to do it well. it took us a while to find our rhythm, to empower people to do this kind of work, to even understand what we needed to do. And I must also share that this work was unprecedented. Even now, when schools are trying to do this kind of work and they reach out to me, they're shocked that we did this 20 years ago.
Then the thought process is even more tougher to break into.
The parents of today in this AI age are still not ready for it because the system is so hardwired. So at that time, when I visited alternate schools, there are some fantastic schools in the country. Sri Aurobindo's Mirambika, there's the Pondicherry School, there's the Krishnamurti schools, there's the Center for Learning in Bangalore. So we went to a lot of these schools. But all of them were in some way elite islands. Elite not in the sense of money, but elite in terms of the parent thinking. So those parents were not seeking those traditional success parameters. They wanted more meaningful lives for their kids.
And you wanted to bring it in the mainstream.
And we wanted to bring it in the mainstream. So even when I met some of these people, they said, no, your parents have already joined. They have a certain aspiration. You're in the middle of Delhi. You want to run a 3,000 student school, this is not going to happen. And we said, if it is not going to happen for a 3,000 student school, then these will just remain islands. Then the narrative is not going to change. Nobody is going to talk about meaning in education. Nobody is going to talk about experience in education or skills in education. So that was the challenge ahead of us. And that's why the parents were falling off. But then in a couple of years when they came back in hordes. Many of those who left came back to the school, and then it just kept gaining popularity. In a few years, hit the #1 spot on the country rankings, which was also incredible for us because before that the only schools that were recognized were legacy schools that everybody had heard of.
Yeah.
So
no, that's fantastic. But my experience has been that you got an orange and you squeeze it, the orange juice will come out. So if we squeeze you, there's a lot of juice that has come out and built great organization. So where is this original juice coming from? I mean, if you talk about your family, your parents, your father, your mother, who's been the influencer? Who's sown the seeds?
So many people. I don't think any one person. But Dad, of course, because as he set up the institutions, he was very clear that there is only one purpose of education, and that is creating good human beings.
He was clear.
He was very clear about it. He said, I have no confusion about it. I am not going to ask you any question on the school results or this or that. The first objective, all of that is incidental. The first objective is to build good human beings. Then I had these questions in my head while most of the people were saying, you've lost your mind. There were also those who were struggling with similar questions and trying to do something. And those were my mentors in that entire journey. Those are the people who took on the job of training our teachers, and the three people in particular that I'm extremely grateful to. Ashish Rajpal, who at that time ran an organization called I Discover I, now runs Exceed. And he was a mentor then, he's a mentor now. He's the one who helped me experience that transformation. For me to experience that sense of purpose. Parminder Singh, Pammi as we call him, runs a fantastic teacher education organization right now called Disha India. He's now replicating the heritage model in a village close to Karnal. He's set up a fantastic school with the panchayat.
With the panchayat?
With the panchayat. It's a community school. It's his village, and he went back to that village and is doing that and runs experiential learning retreats for students, teachers, school leaders. Phenomenal person, really influenced our teams. And then there's Shaji. I don't know if you've met Shaji from Jodo Gyan, who again, apart from his real mathematics programs and real science programs, he's the one who was really influencing our culture. and informing our thinking. Yeah, I'd say those 4 people made a significant impact. And then I'd say as we went along, all of these school leaders, all of the teachers, just what they put out on the table once they got inspired was extremely inspiring. And the kind of effort they put in.
Amazing. And in your journey, I mean, schools for a parent, for society, are seen as, temple or institutions or knowledge. And to the comment you made about your father, that has to be a good human being. So where is the role, or how important is the role of, focusing your education pedagogy around well-being, student well-being? So how's that been? I know that a lot of that has been driven, but where do you see this going? Is it going more towards well-being?
Yeah, it is the most significant challenge.
Most significant.
Most significant challenge today. And we've seen things, despite all of our efforts, getting worse in the last 10 years. I think still, we are working with a generation of kids who at a very early age have gone through a pandemic where the entire world stopped.
Once in a century experience.
Think about that. These school kids have gone through that. These kids, many of them may not have even articulated it. The young ones have gone through the fear that they themselves may not be alive or they might lose a parent. And they've seen people losing
Some of them would
people,
have.
and some of them have, right? They've seen people losing their lives around them. They're overstimulated, especially in our context, and overprotected. Right. And again, this is not a reflection of a parenting style. In this particular socioeconomic strata, you do not feel safe putting your kid out in unorganized situations. So when you and I were growing up, we would fight it out on the playground in the colony, right? Or while playing on the street, we knew how to handle, knew how to put our wickets there, play cricket, handle the car that was coming, handle the neighbor whose glass was being broken, and handle our fights amongst ourselves.
Yeah.
Now children do not have any unsupervised time. Think about it.
This is very important, term you're using, actually, unsupervised time. So they always have somebody on top of their head, watching, getting worried on what they are doing.
Absolutely.
Which clearly is not right.
So that is taking its toll. That is affecting their resilience. All of these things, and the screen time and social media, and just, I don't know, now you can hear parents come to us, you can hear a 5-year-old saying, I'm bored.
Yeah. Tell me about it. My kids.
You remember ever being bored?
No.
And we had nothing to do. We had nothing to do, and we were never bored. Because there wasn't that constant need of stimulation. Now this is just a constant need of dopamine that is being satisfied by multiple things, and which are not the things that should be satisfying that need. So we are going through a crisis. In general, if we see, I think the poor education system is now catching up with everybody because it is not getting you ready for jobs. So when they say 93% of our engineers are unemployable, or many of our B.Ed institutions don't even hold classes. I mean, that's the truth of colleges across the country. And I don't want to name them, but even some of the very good colleges don't care if kids are attending college or not, as long as you write that exam and do well. And the cutoffs are so high that if you've gotten selected, you'll study for a month and you'll crack those exams. So we have a real problem at hand now, and we are, as a society, we're going through an epidemic of loneliness. And relationships are getting very different. In our own country, the impact is even more profound because we've always been a very interdependent society. We've always had a culture of large families and all. As those structures are breaking down, there's a lot of mera, tera, there's a lot of individualism that is...
Used to be hamara.
Used to be hamara. Used to be, whether it is brothers or friends.
You're all in it together.
You didn't have those tight lines that, you're always going Dutch. जिसके पास होता था जो कर देते थे सब, right? Whoever had whatever capacity. It was a very different social structure. That entire social structure is changing now. It's husband's money, wife's money, father's money, child's money. It's breaking down, that entire structure.
But this will happen, and this will continue to probably get worse.
Yeah.
So how do we protect our children from, not getting carried away by the structural changes in the society? Although there will be impact, but is any change that we are talking here is a change for a bubble, or can it be massified? And I know, for our own experience, and we see globally that any excellence that happens, whether it is services, education, product, technology, starts with a very heavy investment, one man making that, significant change and proving that model, proving that prototype. And there's a lot of effort, money, time goes into putting that together. And then over a period of time, it gets massified and goes up to the masses, who takes the benefit of, as the benefit of the effort of IBM on mainframes is now taken by all the mini computers which are available, at a very lower cost as compared to what it was built for. So how do we bring that effect?
See,
and that is the, holy grail.
Truth is, we'll have to work on the socio-emotional side. Right? Thankfully, there is a lot of talk around it now. Earlier, 10 years, 20 years ago, people had a very, very basic understanding, very rudimentary understanding of it, and were talking about value education, which is still relevant, but nobody was talking about, in the context of education, nobody was talking about a holistic program for socio-emotional development. So what we created at Heritage, in that bubble, and even in that bubble, if there are 10,000 students in the community, it's not like it works for everybody, because we're not the only influence. There are hundreds of other influences working on children. So, but within the limited context of the school, we created what we called the human framework that had 4 objectives. One was self-awareness. We thought that is a very important skill for children to learn, because if I can't understand my emotions, manage them, and then express them productively, I'm likely not going to lead a happy life. I'll need to understand my hungers, I'll need to understand my yearnings, I'll have to manage those hungers, I'll have to understand my triggers, what are my buttons. I can see other people's buttons, but I don't know.
What are my buttons?
Right? I'll have to learn small things like we taught kids as young as 5 to 6 year olds protocols, doing experiences like kids dance swaying to music in a room, bumping into each other, one kid getting very upset about it and then just screaming at the other child, helping them understand that, okay, you share your feelings, that, hey, I'm not feeling nice, that you bumped into me, and then expressing and requesting, setting protocols for them to communicate effectively, to express their emotions effectively, to see the change that they wanted to see. So this whole piece on self-awareness is a big piece. And we created some 600 lesson plans right from nursery to grade 12 to do this. Then the piece on relating, building a child's capacity to relate. How do you build enduring relationships? What do you look for in friends? What do you, how do you sustain relationships? How do you grow them?
How do you voice your red flags?
Because let's be honest, I mean, how many people are having real conversations with each other today, even within families?
People want to say what the other wants to hear.
Yeah.
And people don't want to respond because the other might feel bad, or they leave the conversation, leave the room, and the core remains unattended, unanswered.
Yeah, so I often tell teachers when I'm working with them कि या तो आप लोग चुप हो जाते हो या फिर माता आ जाती है.
That's a wonderful way to put it.
Either you'll scream it out or you'll just keep bottling up for the longest time, and this doesn't work. You have to have effective ways to communicate. So that's how you build the capacity to build enduring relationships. How to give love, how to receive love, how to not build walls, to recognize what are the walls that you're building around yourselves, how to unmask and be real. And then the third thing was around finding purpose. How do I constantly engage with the question, why? And the fourth is to serve in terms of the community, to understand my environment, to understand my context, to understand that this inside out and outside in. And that whole work, I'd say, we've been doing it for 5 or 6 years.
Okay.
We got some fantastic experts from the US to stay here for 3 years to build that curriculum, and many trained teachers in our system to do it, but still work in progress. It's going to take forever. Now, how does this bubble move to the masses? I don't know. My hope is that technology could be the lever. Because up until now, the teacher is so busy still delivering that content and meeting that one expectation that is there, that nobody is going to forego. 100 खून माफ है, पर बच्चे के नंबर नहीं आए तो नहीं छोड़ेंगे. Right? It's a systemic expectation.
Systemic expectation, and
Now, they're so busy fulfilling that expectation that there's very little time left for care.
And they take it for granted, while we are, giving them house to live, feeding, shopping for them and taking them out. I mean, this is the definition of care, and it's happening. There's no one-on-one conversation, there's no emotional, social conversation, care, and overview on that.
So it requires a lot of empowering and systemic empowering of parents, of teachers, of all adults in children's life, for them to be able to have those dialogues, for them to have that one person, at least one adult that they can go to and share everything with, and requires a lot of skilling, which I think, the good news is that there is work happening. Many organizations are working on it. More and more school principals, conferences that I go to, there is talk about it, but we're all sort of struggling with how to implement these things well enough. So real challenges.
So one of the things that we always feel, if if God were to give you a wish and granted that, I'll give you a pedagogy that can teach every child individually, personalized, don't worry about number of teachers. Do you think that is a model, being personalized and customized to each child's need? And that is why I've seen, the schools who have done well, the number of students in the classroom have significantly reduced from our times. I remember in my school, we had about 60 kids in a classroom, and we would always wonder, outside of the first bench, what are the other kids doing, and they're having their lunch also in the class, nobody knows. Is personalization, customization the holy grail? Is that the answer? Because that is where, you're able to sort of customize the offering as per the academic need, the social welfare need, the mental and emotional welfare need, that this is the child, for this child, this is how I'm going to behave. This is an auditory child, doesn't understand visual, has weaker concepts in grade 6. This is what I need to bring about when I'm talking to this child. Same grade, another child, probably a kinesthetic kid. This is how I need to deal with this kid. So do you think that is the direction that is potentially an answer?
One problem that we have, and of course, different kids engage from different entry points. That is one issue. Now, I don't know if it will be practically possible for a teacher to engage kids from those multiple entry points. Even if the teacher had 10 kids in a classroom, the 10 kids will require a different input, right? And would probably never be practically possible to achieve. When I say technology, the power that tech has is that as far as the content is concerned, now I'm talking about the limit,
only the content,
objective of the content, which is what an average school is pursuing, right?
Yeah. That can be personalized, customized.
That can be personalized and customized, because currently the child is not being challenged or supported at their level, right? So when we see, like in grade 3, we use an international assessment for reading. Okay, it's a 45-minute one-on-one assessment that the teacher runs, and at the end of it, we saw that in grade 3, the levels were from D to Q.
Okay.
That is the diversity.
Okay.
Each level takes 40 books, and from D to E, that book is very small. If one was to go about it scientifically, each level takes 40 books of reading.
Same grade, that's the variation.
That's the range. Yeah. Now, a child who's at level Q can actually read and comprehend university level text. You can give that child a 9th grade biology text that he knows nothing about, and he'll make something of it.
Okay.
Okay, he can read a good, serious classic novel. The child who's sitting at D is barely able to read a sentence and make sense of it.
And they're all in the same class.
They're all in the same class, and they're all being fed the same book. Now imagine what happens. Now what can tech do? It can identify your level.
Like diagnose your level.
It can diagnose your level. It can check you for phonics. It can, now there are reading programs. There's one that's called Amira that we've been using. Now it's an AI tutor.
Right.
Now it can teach a child how to read from scratch without any teacher intervention, 15 minutes a day.
Wow.
That is the power of the program. Now imagine there are 30 such items. One is reading, there is math, there are 30 such things that you're expecting the child to learn. Yeah. I think humanity will be better served if all of these can be outsourced. This content can be outsourced, and the job of the teacher then is to inspire the child, to advise the child, to take care of their socio-emotional health, maybe meet them once a week individually for an hour, half an hour, do a goal setting kind of an exercise, hold them accountable, help them understand why that learning is important for them, how it advances their life goals at whatever stage they are at. So you can't tell a 6-year-old kid that if you learned how to read, you can become a great professor at MIT. No, something that the child relates to, that hey, you'll be able to do this, you'd be able to, go with me to the mall and read what is written there, or you'd be able to make sense of the world, or whatever it is that the child relates to. Give them a sense of purpose at that stage. So those are the roles, the things that I said were missing from my own education. If the teacher could start using technology, outsource some of the content to that, and then use the classroom for deeper discussions, to build those skills, to build that perspective, to build that critical thinking, to have projects and real experiences, to build problem solving skills that kids will need, and conflict resolution and the ability to negotiate.
Basic life skills?
Basic life skills. Let's use that classroom
for that,
to do that stuff, and let this mundane stuff be done by tech. Because let's face it, I mean, imagine a grade 6 teacher teaching decimals to 30 kids. Let's say you're in a privileged school, there are only 30 kids in that classroom. You're teaching decimals. Is there any way for the teacher, unless you're a phenomenal teacher, to really figure out where each one of these 30 kids is?
Not possible at all.
Not possible. A good tech solution
can do that.
We'll give you that decimal question. We'll then figure out, okay, you don't know decimals, there's a problem with fractions, or there's a problem with basic division, or there's a problem with even addition, subtraction, or the child is not understanding numbers at all.
It doesn't even understand parts.
Yeah, doesn't even understand parts. So it can drill down several levels to then offer coaching and practice and questions at that level, and then build up from there. While a kid who's moved ahead of those decimals can get far more complex problems, so the child feels challenged, the child feels engaged. So I know I give long answers for everything.
No, these are deep answers.
But the answer is not in making learning fun or engaging through a multitude of experiences. I don't think that it would be fantastic if we could do that, but I don't think that would be practical. The answer is in meeting the child where they are. The moment you meet the child where they are, they will be engaged.
Knowing where the kid is, calibrate that correctly, that's where the game is. And once you know that, once you've diagnosed the problem, then you can provide your good prognosis that this is how we're going to solve it.
So engagement will be a function of being challenged or supported at your own level.
So how urgent is this need? I mean, you've seen education system in India very closely.
About 100 years late.
I know we are 100 years late, and in fact, it feels like we've literally jumped few decades and cycles in the learning curve, and today we are talking about 21st century skills. What are those skills? I mean, we've not got a handle on the 20th century skills, and we have to get our kids ready for 21st century skills. So where are we?
I don't think we're anywhere. I think I know I don't like to make sweeping statements, but I think in terms of preparing our kids, we are failing them. So 15 years ago, I used to run a talk on the skills gap, on how unemployable our people are, and anyone who's recruited, we all know how difficult it is to find skillful people. I was talking to a friend in Singapore who's running an education company recently. He said, even recruiting people there is very hard. I said, you've got talent from all around the globe. He said, no, the education systems across are still meeting an examination kind of result, kind of a need. They're not preparing children. And now when we look at what has changed in the last 10 or 15 years to what has happened in the last 1.5 years, I think we're sitting at a very serious tipping point. I don't know what jobs are going to sustain. I know that social intelligence and creative intelligence will still be important. Yeah, although we don't know if in 10 years the social sensing also is going to get so strong that AI is going to get so good at it that it may be able to, two companies, robots may be sitting and negotiating, or definitely the CEO, the AI will have a board seat for sure, and the CEO will definitely be consulting, just like doctors are beginning to now rely more and more on AI for diagnosis, and they're saying it can diagnose a lot better wherever there is data available. I think CEOs also will be having those discussions. So a lot of the regular repetitive jobs, whether they're cognitive or non-cognitive, will get eradicated. In the process, will new jobs get built? I think so. But we're hitting an industrial revolution kind of scenario where the pace of new jobs is not quite going to be, new jobs coming in is not going to be quite as swift as the jobs going out.
There will be a deficit.
There will be, and there just will not be enough work for people. There will not be enough work for 8 billion people.
And imagine those people who are not getting enough work and they are educated poorly.
Yeah.
Is a recipe for disaster. That you don't know how to handle yourself, yourself emotionally, and you don't have a job to keep yourself busy. And I always keep thinking that that is where the need to bring more and more educators, teachers in the limelight, so that they can take upon themselves. Because right now you've seen it in your journey. Becoming a teacher is not the most preferred profession, whereas this is the profession that gives out all the other professions in the world. And then where do you see that happening? I mean, can that be a solution? Can building a battalions of involved and engaged teacher doing policy level changes at B.Ed, M.Ed and education institution side?
Yeah, thankfully there's a lot of work happening. I was just with some people at NCT, the National Council for Teacher Education. They're bringing back the innovative programs. They're bringing in a 4-year integrated degree program for teaching. So there is work happening at the technical end. But again, the challenge is who wants to become a teacher?
How can we make that exciting and enticing?
Yeah, we've made all kinds of recommendations, including make teachers income tax free. I don't know. How do you glamorize this entire profession? How do you bring back that pride into teaching?
And it used to be.
That used to be. We run an organization. My wife, about her work. The organization is called I Am a Teacher.
Yeah.
And, I used to joke with her when she was naming it I Am a Teacher. And I said, hey, Smriti, if somebody is going to ask you, where do you work? What are you going to say? I'm a teacher. And then they'll be like, no, I'm asking you, where do you work? And so I used to joke about it, but she stuck to her guns.
Yeah.
She said, no, I am going to call it I Am a Teacher, because we need to instill pride in teaching. That's the most important thing. And one thing I can say to anybody who's listening to this, AI will never take away teaching jobs. We need more and more and more teachers. Technology will start taking care of some of the content areas that it should, but the teacher's role, teachers will finally be able to do what they were meant to do, to take care of the human side of teaching and learning. And I can again say the impact that a teacher can make, one teacher can make in a child's life, a parent can't make in their entire lifetime.
Absolutely.
You and I can keep telling our kids what to do,
yeah.
But the teacher tells them something, or one thing that the stuff that registers often comes from the teachers. Yeah.
No, that is true. And to your point, do we need more teachers as we go forward, or do we need more mentors? Because, when it comes to being a teacher, more often than not, it's associated by, with delivering content and academic excellence, which, in all likelihood, AI can do a very good job with that. So as we go along, do we need somebody who can look at more holistically mentor the child?
Yeah, I think again it's very simple if you see. Teachers need to start looking at themselves as teachers of students, not of subjects. The moment you make that shift in your head,
Yeah.
and the moment your PTM changes to, the discussion changes to, hey, how's your kid feeling? Is there something happening at home? He's seeming a bit lost inside the classroom. And teachers can sense that. A good teacher will know where each child is. If not in mathematics, they should know where each child is in their socio-emotional state. Moving the dialogue to that and starting to support the child would go a long way, I would say.
No, I think to your comment, I remember when I had taken my son to the boarding school there, and I was having a conversation with his teacher. And then, he introduced himself as, I'm a student of physics, and I'll be mentoring your child. He didn't say, I'm a teacher of physics or a physics expert. He said, I'm a student of physics, and I'm going to be mentoring your child. And that was an amazing, like a flipping moment for me.
It's a huge statement, yeah.
And very experienced, amazing, teacher. And I think that humbleness is also another, point that I wanted to, in your journey, how teachers can stay humble, because the moment they start feeling they know it all. And I have seen some of the teachers, they've completely gone off track and lost the purpose.
You're absolutely right. I think as a teacher, this whole journey, or as an institution, even when we talk about corporate
if you know it all, then
sector, the moment you think you've learnt it all, you're finished. Yeah, you'll stop innovating, you'll stop upskilling yourself, and that is a recipe for disaster for sure. I mean, look at how many companies have changed in the Fortune 500 list over the last 30, 40 years. It's very clear evidence that if you're going to build anything lasting, you've got to be a learning organization. But there's a systemic problem there, Aakash, especially in schools. And in our social context also, people are not forgiving of lack of expertise. So in schools, what happens is, and I must empathize with school principals, they carry the burden of knowing everything.
Yeah, they are the one-stop shop.
You're the principal, so you must know everything.
Yeah.
Right? It doesn't work like that. We're confronted with hundreds of situations every day that we can never be prepared for. And so the principal needs to wear that hat, cannot be vulnerable, is expected to say, I know to everything. And then that is what flows to the teacher. And that's what creates a dynamic that is not conducive to learning for anybody.
Absolutely. So now, little easy on operation, your workload. Yeah. So what's cooking in the kitchen? Where is it all going?
See, I think I've spent, for the last 5 years, I've been thinking about it. I've spent a lot of time creating this model, because the model does not exist at that time, of something real in mainstream education. Now, of course, I've had the rare privilege, thanks to so many things that aligned, thanks to all the teachers who worked for us, thanks to all the mentors that I found. The universe really conspired for this thing to happen. I feel like now I want to do more work on policy, on change in education, on change in especially teacher education. If there's one area that I think we've understood to some extent, it is how to prepare teachers in India. And again, our philosophy is not around preparing teachers simply for technical skills, but really building belief. If you ask me truly, because we work with a lot of women, it's a process of women empowerment. It's not a process of teacher empowerment. The teacher empowerment follows that women empowerment. And so I want to work more and more in that area, in the area of how teachers can use technology so that they free up time to focus on what is important with the child, so that they can move beyond teaching the subject to actually teaching the child. Yeah, and in terms of curriculum, in terms of assessments, in terms of everything that the government is going to do over the next 15 to 20 years, I really want to, I see myself contributing in those areas, having learned a little bit about how to do this on the ground.
And is that the inning that you want to play solo, or your family again wants to, participate in that, or they have picked up their own areas of interest?
So, no, my family is involved. Of course, the ones, me and my wife are completely focused on this. And I think my entire extended family is very, very supportive of it. We've got a foundation that's funding a lot of these initiatives. And my children, I don't know.
Would you want to make them a teacher?
I would love that. I would absolutely love that. Yeah.
Fantastic. So, before we, come to the end of this fantastic, inspiring, insightful chat with you, is there any view of the next decade on Indian education you want to leave people with, something they need to think about, and what, the parents who are watching, the children who are watching, what can they do, from their own end, to make this journey better for the society?
I think if there's one thing that we could all do as adults, parents, teachers, institutions, is to build a culture of care, to focus as much on kindness as we do on achievement. I think our obsession with achievement is really creating a problem, and they're achieving in areas where we are assuming right now achievement will bring dividend, right? Just like our parents were thinking 40 years ago, if they did well in exams, they will become better entrepreneurs, or they will be better at their job. Two of the most successful people in the financial sector in my school batch were the absolute backbenchers who hardly attended classes in school and who did extremely bad.
I can relate to it.
Right. So now that correlation is going to be, it really is not going to be a function of success in what we believe is going to make them successful. So we'd have to go beyond, focus on building, apart from caring schools, nurturing in them the capacity to relate, to become self-aware individuals, and they'll find their way then. Really, you can't. There is no recipe right now, and definitely the recipe that we think is going to make that good human being is not going to work, or that competent human being is not going to work. Kindness over achievement any day. That's what the world will need a lot of going forward.
Fantastic. That's a beautiful message, very, very meaningful, very relatable, and many, many congratulations for what you have contributed to the education as a sector in this country.
Thank you so much.
And heritage is a name to reckon with, and kudos to your effort and the philosophies that you build.
All thanks to my mentors and teachers. But thank you so much for having me here. It's been great talking to you. sharing my ideas.
Thank you.
Yeah.